Results now in, many of them final, and there are a number of new candidates set to swear the oath of office. The first one set to move into that new office in very short order joins me now. New Board of Alderman presidential nominee, Megan Green, joining us live after your election victory last night. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, I guess you have to move in pretty quickly. This was an office vacated in the wake of federal scandal, so a special election doesn't mean you wait until January to swear the oath of office.
Correct.
How quick is this transition? How chaotic is it?
More than likely, it will be done on the 18th, so not this Friday, but the next Friday. It typically takes the Board of Elections about a week to certify election results, and then the first board meeting after that will be that Friday.
Very interesting. What does this say? We heard the mayor and your speeches last night, both alluding to the history of this moment, for the first time ever having all three heads of city government being women. Why is that important to you in this moment?
I mean, we shattered a glass ceiling last night, having never elected a woman to head the Board of Aldermen before. That is monumental in and of itself, but now knowing that 3 women are going to be on E&A working together, who have a history of collaborating well together, I think that's really exciting for our city.
Any words to Jack Coatar, either in your phone call or now with our audience, that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, Jack reached out to me last night. He congratulated me on the win and said he looked forward to working together. I want to echo that. I think that we need to usher in a new Board of Aldermen where we are focused on collaboration rather than contention and confrontation. And so I look forward to working with all of my colleagues, even the ones that did not support me in this race, to ensure that we're moving forward with what's best for the city.
You mentioned confrontation, but I wonder if that's code for just disagreement. The legislative process does require some of that, doesn't it?
It definitely does. And I think that there's ways to disagree in productive ways. You know, the mayor and I, we don't agree on everything. And we still have a lot of respect for each other. And we know how to disagree in ways that are still productive and move our city forward. All
right, I want to see if we can put down a few markers about how you will measure your success. First of all, are you running again in the spring? Because this is an office for 5 months.
Yes. I mean, I announced last night filing opens in 2 weeks. So we have to start collecting signatures now to be able to run again in the spring.
Does that give you enough runway to really run on your record of 5 months? How much can you change in 5 months?
I mean, it's a really short amount of time, but there are some very emergent issues that we have to address. I mean, the Board of Aldermen is reducing from 28 wards to 14 wards next spring. There's been no planning that has gone into what that reduction actually looks like and what it means. We have to get to work to that ASAP.
Yeah, so you think you want a job in government. Good luck.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of work to do. We have to look at our development system. I think there's some low-hanging fruit that's in the Board of Aldermen right now, a bill that Shane Cohn has sponsored to relook at how we do some of our tax incentives. We should be moving those things and moving them quickly.
When you talk to the business community, and I don't think this will be any surprise to you, many of them might be a little leery about your leadership. They've heard some of your pitches and they're not really buying it. They prefer Jack Coatar's message, by and large. Maybe some of them are on your side. Put some markers down. You talk to the business community, they'll tell you the thing that they need most is predictability. They need to be able to expect, budget their future, plan their future. How can they do business in the city of St. Louis and succeed under your leadership?
You know, predictability is something I've been talking about for years. We need a standardized system for development in the city so that when folks come to us asking for tax incentives, they know from day one how much they can qualify for, in what area of the city, and what community benefits are going to be expected of them. And that process should not change from development to development. We need to keep it uniform so that it eliminates corruption from that system, but also ensures that developers know what we're expecting of them.
So any public dollar that goes out the door through tax incentive, through TIF, all of it will be going with strings attached, like labor peace agreements?
Most of them will.
Most?
Which
ones won't?
I think we have to look at over a certain dollar amount. You know, it doesn't make sense for, you know, very small projects to also have a community benefit agreement attached to them. But probably most cities look at, you know, deals that are over $10 million to require those community benefits.
A lot of those development dollars in days past came with promises of jobs in the future. Often those jobs didn't quite materialize or didn't all materialize. What are some other guarantees you can say, okay, if we're going to invest as a city in your business, we're going to get X, Y, and Z back? Are there other things you can add to that list, and what are they?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I think we need to be doing is inclusionary zoning. This is standard practice in most cities, where if you are building a new market rate development, you're required to set aside somewhere from 10 to 30% of units as affordable. It ends up being a standardized process. It is true for every development that would happen across the city. I think that's an easy way to start to get some community benefits in place and also create a standardized system at the same time.
Are you going to measure, as a metric of your own success, the number of jobs St. Louis loses or creates while you're in charge?
I think jobs are a part of it, but I think we have to look at it from the point of view of living wage jobs. Are we moving the needle and moving people out of poverty? That needs to be the real goal at the end of the day.
Put in perspective for our audience where you rank on your list of priorities the issue of public safety and crime. How high of a priority is that?
It is up at the top. And, you know, the budget, we're going to quickly be starting to work on the budget for next year. I talked throughout the campaign about the success of the Operation Peacemaker program out in Richmond, California. I would like to see some money set aside in the budget or perhaps through these ARPA funds to get that program going. We have to be focusing on public safety from day one, both in terms of violent crime, but also in things like street safety, right? You know, one of the main things I heard from folks across the city was concerns about erratic driving and people running stop signs. And so we just had a bill filed last week that would appropriate about $40 million in ARPA money to traffic calming and traffic planning throughout the city. I think we need to get that out so that we can get workers there to start putting in place some of these improvements.
I meant to ask you this question in the interview right before the election, but one of the things that has been difficult, I think, for just members of the board to talk together, for reporters to cover the happenings of the board, is that you're all scattered meeting on Zoom still.
Yes.
I don't know of any business that is still doing that. I mean, there's hybrid function.
Yes.
How long before the board starts to meet back in person?
My goal is my swearing-in ceremony in a week and a half will be in person, and we will continue to be in person from that point on.
Very interesting. Do you have any intention of lobbying in Jefferson City? What would your relationship be like with the state legislature, or is that more of a role for the mayor?
It's both. You know, I think that the Board of Aldermen as a whole needs to be more strategic about maybe we need to go to Jefferson City and testify on certain bills that impact the city, show our face there, build some relationships with folks in outstate Missouri, in addition to supporting the lobbying agenda that comes through ENA.
We're going to hear from some of the victory and concession speeches last night in just a moment. Before we do, I want to give you a chance to respond to the last line of questioning that we discussed when you were on this program. Yeah. Tom Oldenburg, one of your colleagues at the board, during the board meeting said he saw a retreat from progressive politics, a retreat from defund the police, a retreat from having cops do more with less. I think I'm paraphrasing him, but pretty close to an accurate quote there. The voters just made their voices heard.
They did.
What did you see? How would you assess the accuracy of Alderman Oldenburg's comments in light of last night's election?
I think that voters in the city realize that we need real public safety and that policing is only a small part of what actually constitutes public safety. Voters are hungry for us to embrace strategies that have worked in other places and not continue to just double down on the same failed policies of the last 2 or 3 decades. So I think voters showed us last night that they're ready for a new direction, they're ready for a different vision to produce real public safety for our city.
Does there need to be a different vision from Kim Gardner's office?
I mean, I have not met with Circuit Attorney Gardner as of yet. I look forward to sitting down with her, talking about ways that we can collaborate. If there are things that the Board of Aldermen can be doing that is supportive of her office to make sure she has the resources or the talents that she needs in order to effectively prosecute folks that come through her office.
How would you assess the job she's doing?
You know, that's a tough question for me. I don't interact with her office that frequently. I've had some constituents who have had great interactions with her office and some that have had more challenging experiences with her office. I think that's probably true, though, with most people in city government.
All right, before we hear from Mayor Jones and your opponent, Jack Coatar, would you like to characterize just some of your message to your supporters last night, what you told them in that crowded room?
Just very thankful that so many folks in our city put the trust in me to help us build a St. Louis that works for everyone. I am not going to let you down. It's going to be a lot of hard work. It is not work that I can do on my own. We're still going to have to continue working and organizing together to make sure that we do have a St. Louis that works for everyone.
All right, Madam President, very soon to be. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Here's a quick look at some of those speeches that we saw last night from campaigns as they took in the results and it started to hit home. Take a listen.
Over confrontation. Today, St. Louis chose progress over the status quo.
The next few months, I do look forward to working with the mayor and President-elect Green and the rest of the Board of Aldermen on the transition, because we're at a weird time in the city where, you know, the Board of Aldermen is going to go from 28 to 14 members, and there's a lot of changes at foot. And we've got a lot of work to do in the coming months.
And we've brought the matter of racial equity into every conversation the government has. And in those conversations, they'll continue. St. Louis cannot grow, cannot be safe, and we cannot, until we address race, until there are enough good schools, good housing, good jobs, good transportation, good child care, and good retirements for everyone, regardless of where they live in St. Louis County. So the conversation will continue.
I'm disappointed for the future of our community and for all of you. I believe that the outcome that we're seeing tonight is purely my loss, purely my failure. I've always believed and I've always said, stop it. Leadership requires that you win as a team. But under any circumstances, it's the leader's loss. And so it is tonight. If there's any blame, if we did anything wrong, I don't know what it is. But if we did, that blame is purely mine.
Many of us are feeling scared right now. We're worried about Missouri's future and the future erosion of our rights. We feel discouraged because we work so hard, and it's easy to feel like that work didn't matter. But tonight, as I think back to our months on the trail, I know that that work that we did mattered because we reached so many Missourians in every corner of our state.
I received a very kind and gracious phone call from Ms. Valentine. I want to thank her tonight for running a tough and spirited campaign. But now, the voters have spoken. The polls have closed and the results are in. Tonight, the people of Missouri have voted for a new direction and a new generation of leadership to save America.
There's Missouri's newest Senator-elect, Eric Schmitt, giving his rousing speech to voters last night. Joining me now is Anita Manion, our political analyst, and 5 on Your Side's political commentator, to give us some reaction to all of this. You heard some of those speeches last night, and you helped us to break them down in the moment. Anything new occurring to you in the hours that have passed since we first sort of saw those results?
I guess when I heard Eric Schmitt there at the end and heard his speech last night, and then I look at the margins, he won by almost the exact same margin that Trump won Missouri. It just, continues to make me reflect on how our politics are so nationalized and how he's adopted a lot of the sort of grievance politics and rhetoric of Trump. And so I can see that Missouri contingency of Schmitt and Hawley being a pretty fiery Senate duo.
We do have that map that we showed you if you were watching our live stream election results last night of Missouri and how the votes broke down. We'll show you that now. You can see those three blue counties. We'll turn the heat on. It's going to change a little bit the coloration of all this. You'll see those deep red sections. And you'll see down here by Springfield, that was somewhere that Trudy Bush Valentine was a bit more competitive, not nearly enough. Over here by Kansas City, rather, not Jefferson City, by Kansas City. Trudy Bush Valentine prevailing in that more urban area and closer to Jefferson City and college campus town there in Columbia. Trudy Bush Valentine winning there as well. This is an interesting dividing line that I think is noteworthy. St. Louis County, 61%. You go into St. Charles and it's just slightly red. a bit more competitive there. What lessons do you think there are? And I'm going to add this note, Anita. Missouri House Democrats, even though Eric Schmitt won, even though Republicans in the Missouri State House gerrymandered those districts for their most political advantage that they could, Missouri House Democrats still outmaneuvered that gerrymandering, those lines, to pick up a net of 3 seats. Is it anywhere near enough? No. They're still in the super minority. But does that start to indicate that maybe there's some swell of, how do you measure that?
Well, going back to Trudy Bush Valentine results, I would note that she outperformed Sam Page in St. Louis County, so we can talk about that as well. And then as far as what it means for House Democrats, actually, for the first time in decades, the bipartisan commission drew those House districts. So that's one reason why they were more competitive, because they weren't particularly gerrymandered by the Republican state legislature. So that left about 20 competitive seats, and the Democrats flipped the majority of those, I think 13. And so that's bodes well for Democrats in a sense. It's the most seats they've had in the House since 2010. But it's not enough to really get things done in the Missouri State Legislature.
Not exactly a blue wave.
That's right.
When you look at that, very interesting. What did you make of Megan Green's comments about the direction of the city? She said cooperation and coordination rather than conflict and confrontation. This looks like a green light for Mayor Tashara Jones' agenda in the city of St. Louis.
It definitely will lessen the conflict that was there between Louis Reed and Tashara Jones. I think these two will work more in partnership. So if you like progressive politics, that's good news. And if you're more moderate, maybe that's bad news. She talked a lot about development, and I think that's wise because the controversies that we've had with the resignations and trials of the president of the Board of Aldermen and other aldermen were focused around those tax incentives and tax abatements, TIFs. And so I think it's important that the city comes across as transparent and reform-minded when it comes to those issues.
Very interesting. I want to take another look at this map because there's another state house race in the Senate side in Jefferson City that we were tracking through last night, and it's still at this hour, it doesn't look like we can quite call it yet. 65% of the estimated or expected vote total out there, and Tracy McCreery, the Senate Democrat, looks like she's in the lead, likely to win that race. That, again, on the edge of St. Louis and St. Louis County, but that's a Democratic victory.
It is, and in a significant margin if this holds. I've seen other places basically calling this for her, so I'll speak as if she won it. But that, I wouldn't have been surprised if this race came down to just 1 or 2 points. And so if she holds that margin, I think that is significant for the Democrats as well. And this is a race where each side spent like over $1 million.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think the polls were wrong going into nationwide. You zoom out and look at the country, there were people going in, Republicans predicting 15, 20, 40 seats they might pick up. I think House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy said somewhere between 20 and 40 seats they'd pick up. We're still waiting to see how the final balance of power shakes out, but it's more of a red ripple than a red wave. Yeah,
I think from the national stage and what affects our, U.S. Senate and House members here in Missouri, it is actually pretty good news for the Democrats. Usually in this first term, midterm election, it's kind of a bloodbath. We're talking about 40, 60 seat losses. And so this is something the Democrats can feel good about.
How did Democrats manage to do that? I'll put a few different facts out there about the timeline. We saw Joe Biden forgive federal marijuana offenses. We saw him deliver student loan debt relief, although that's tied up in the courts. Mm-hmm. He gave several speeches about the importance of democracy and about not accepting the results of elections. All of those 3 things were widely panned by far-right Republicans like Josh Hawley or Eric Schmitt, who sued to stop the student loan debt forgiveness or who took issue with some of those things. Yet, how do you think those steps, releasing the strategic reserve or gas to try to show some sensitivity to inflation, I think you can see some political savvy or some political thinking in that. Do we know now that it was effective?
I think it's hard to say how effective it was. I'm interested in digging more into the exit polls and seeing some of that. I think we did see, where a lot of people thought the abortion issue was sort of fading since the summer. Look at Michigan, look at some other states. That seems to still be an energizing issue. And I think, less so than Obama or Hillary Clinton or others, it's been harder for the Republicans to really except for among maybe that 30% of their base, stoke that energy against Joe Biden that they've been able to stoke against other folks. Now, certainly his approval ratings are low, but I think that idea of like Joe Biden is a socialist or some of these things are a little harder to sell.
They're fighting, competing for that middle ground, at least politically speaking. Let's check in on the map on the Illinois side of the river before we let you go, and we will sign off even a few minutes early, give you some time back. You've spent a lot of time with us watching the results come in last night. Tammy Duckworth, the senator there, winning easily. Every one of these races, Democrats defended their home turf. But just look at Chicago and the surrounding suburbs and parts of Metro East, even parts of central Illinois that would go blue. Less so downstate for J.B. Pritzker. He had a tougher time. But if we take the heat map off and just look at more easily, you can see which counties he won. I mean, a clean sweep in Chicago and the suburbs. That's the area. And he picked up big parts of Champaign and McLean counties, Peoria County, areas where Republicans have long done really, really well. If we keep going down, looking at Secretary of State Alexi Giannoulias winning with very much the same roadmap to victory. I mean, it's almost consistent.
It is.
Kwame Raoul, just to check off the list here, Susana Mendoza doing very much the same. I think she might have the highest margin of victory, 577,000 votes, maybe the most popular Democrat in Illinois right now. And then Mike Frericks, the treasurer, coming close to, if not the least popular Democrat. He had the smallest margin of victory, it looks like. Any lessons to be learned about the style of campaign that Darren Bailey ran here, or the fact that House Republicans really ramped up the warnings about crime, and it didn't work for them?
It didn't in Illinois, at least. You know, we kind of talked about last night, a tale of two states, right? In Missouri, it's like this migration solidification of a solidly red state, and then we see the opposite on the other side of the river with Illinois coming across solidly blue. I mean, Pritzker sort of handpicked Bailey and saw him as a weaker candidate, but we didn't see Pritzker like far exceeding those other statewide races. So I would say it seems like an across-the-board repudiation.
Already some ripple effects, some consequences of last night's election results. House Republican Minority Leader Jim Durkin has announced he will not seek re-election to that leadership post. He has not yet spoken about his own political future. He's expected to win his House race, still be in Springfield, but stepping aside. That would be a changing of the guard, if you will, from sort of the John McCain style Republican. He was very close with John McCain, Jim Durkin was. He ran for the Senate against Dick Durbin years ago and was sort of the figurehead. Now he had clashed with the Bailey wing of the party. Both of them lose, almost mutually assured destruction and some bitter infighting. Now there's this opening for this next wave of Republicans to remake their party in Illinois.
Yeah, and we've sort of seen that those factions in the Missouri state legislature too, with the conservative caucus and the, you know, kind of more establishment Republicans, and now with the conservative caucus dissolving, it'll be interesting to see how both state houses play out.
And we look forward to having perhaps the new incoming Speaker of the House on our program here from Missouri to see what direction they might go, as well as the House Speaker in Illinois. We might have them in the next week or two. So thank you for joining us on the record. Anita, good to have you back with us.
Good to be back.
Any final thoughts on these last races? What are the races you're still watching most closely out west?
I mean, I think like everyone else, I'm waiting for those Senate results. We know we won't know Georgia for a month or so, but boy, Arizona and Nevada, we're like watching every update, right?
Certainly are. All right, Anita, thanks. And we will see you on the record, same time next week. Until then, we're off the record.